Before we begin, I want to thank the 6 people who subscribed after watching my first video. It may not sound like a lot, but for a brand new channel, it means a lot to me. Thank you for supporting me at the start of this journey. Now, let's bring back the challenge from the last video. Watch this battle all the way to the end. If you don't enjoy the gameplay, don't subscribe. If you don't enjoy the strategy, don't subscribe. If you don't think this channel has potential, don't subscribe. But if this battle earns your support, then prove me wrong and hit that subscribe button. Today's War of Dots battle is a little different. This isn't a replay, and I have no idea how the game is going to end. Everything you're about to see happened live while I was recording. Will this be a victory, a defeat, or something completely unexpected? Let's find out. I start by placing some of my troops on my cities to generate funds while keeping an eye on the battlefield. At this point, I have no idea what my opponent is planning, so I'm trying to stay flexible and prepare for any situation. At the same time, I'm moving my reserve tanks closer to the front line. Whether my opponent decides to attack, defend, or make an aggressive early move, I want my strongest units in position and ready to respond. My opponent is pulling back 2 light units, and one of his units is left exposed, so I'm going to take the chance and attack it. He's replacing those units with tanks, so I'm pulling my attacking units back and bringing my own tanks to the front line. Overextending this early in the game is usually not a good idea. One small mistake can put your units in a bad position, and neither of us wants to give away an easy advantage this soon. My opponent starts a small attack, but I quickly counterattack and force him to pull back his 2 light units. With those units retreating, I decide to focus my entire force on his 2 tanks, trying to inflict as much damage as possible early in the game and gain an advantage before the battle fully develops. That tank is getting pretty low on health, so I'm pulling it back and bringing one of my light units into the fight instead. In War of Dots, if you want to win long battles, you need to keep recycling your units. Damaged units should be pulled back to heal, while fresh units take their place on the front line. It's a simple habit, but it can make a huge difference over the course of a game. So both of us continue recycling our units, pulling damaged troops back to heal, and replacing them with healthier ones on the front line. At this stage, neither side wants to take unnecessary losses, and we're both trying to get as much value as possible out of every unit. My opponent ends up losing a unit in the fighting. Even though the casualty numbers are still fairly close, this is an important loss for him. He now has 1 less unit to heal, rotate, and bring back into the battle. It may not seem like much right now, but if I can capitalize on it, this could give me a long-term advantage as the battle goes on.
This light unit is getting low on health, so I'm pulling it back and replacing it with a healthier unit. The same goes for this tank. It's taking quite a bit of damage, so I'm bringing it off the front line as well and rotating in fresh troops to keep the pressure on. By the way, you guys can tell me in the comments if I'm good at recycling my units or not. I've only been playing War of Dots for about 2 or 3 weeks, so I'm still learning and trying to improve my gameplay. I'm also thinking about uploading 2 or 3 videos a week, so let me know what you think about that schedule. And as you've probably noticed, I'm not using my real voice. English isn't my native language. I can understand it well, but I'm not very comfortable speaking it yet, so I'm using AI narration for now. This unit is getting low, so I'm pulling it back and replacing it with a healthier one. Keeping damaged units in the fight for too long is usually a good way to lose them. This fight has been going on for quite a while now. My opponent has taken more casualties than I have, but the difference isn't nearly big enough to decide the battle. Now he's starting to pull back his forces. I'm going to put some pressure on the units on the edge of his line and see what he's planning. He could be regrouping, setting up a new attack, or trying to lure me forward so I don't want to rush in without knowing what's waiting for me. Okay, I don't want to go too deep into his territory and end up getting my units encircled. I'm going to pull my troops back as well. There's no point in taking unnecessary risks just to gain a little bit of ground. I've seen enough games where a player gets too confident, pushes a bit too far, and suddenly loses a bunch of units. The battle is still pretty even right now, so I'd rather stay patient and keep my army in a good position. If an opportunity shows up later, I can always attack again. Let me reorganize my lines a little and make sure everything is where it needs to be. While I was pushing forward, I spotted a tank near the mountain pass, so I'm sending one of my units over there, just in case something happens. I'd rather be prepared now than react too late. I'm also keeping 2 scout units slightly ahead of my main line. They won't do much fighting, but they'll give me an early warning if my opponent decides to launch an attack, which could be very useful. My opponent keeps attacking my scout units with a few troops and then pulling back. It's a little annoying, but it's not a major problem, and my scouts can handle the pressure for now. This light scout is getting low on health, so I'm going to pull it back and let it heal. I'll do the same with my heavy scout and bring it back to a safer position. I also noticed that one of his tanks is a bit isolated from the rest of his forces. That looks like an opportunity, so I'm going to move in and try to inflict some damage before he can support it. So we have a small skirmish with that tank, but nothing major comes from it. Honestly, this battle is starting to get a bit boring. We've spent a lot of time maneuvering, healing, and trading small amounts of damage, without either side making a serious move. At some point, someone is going to have to take the initiative, and it might have to be me. If this continues for much longer, I'll probably need to launch an attack and force the battle to move forward. My opponent is sending a few scout units forward. He could be preparing for an attack, checking my positions, or trying to figure out whether I'm about to make a move myself. For now, it's hard to tell what his plan is, so I'll keep an eye on those scouts and see what happens next. Sometimes these small moves don't mean much, and sometimes they're the first sign that a bigger attack is coming. Let me attack this isolated light unit and see if I can pick up some free damage. My unit is starting to get low on health though, so I'm pulling it back and replacing it with a healed one. That's been the story of this battle so far, both sides constantly rotating units and trying to get every bit of value out of them. At this point, it almost feels like a war of patience. Neither side has managed to land a decisive blow, and we're both looking for that one mistake that could change everything. I also notice my opponent is bringing 2 tanks into the fight. Those are going to be a problem if I let them operate freely, so I'll need to keep an eye on them. If I get the chance to surround them or cut off their retreat, that could be a huge opportunity and might finally give me the advantage I've been looking for. So I decide to launch an invasion on the southern front, and almost at the same time my opponent starts making moves through the mountain pass. To be honest, I'm not too worried about the mountain pass right now. The terrain is favorable for defense, and I think I have enough units there to hold the line if he decides to push harder. The south is a different story. By attacking there, I'm forcing my opponent to split his attention. While I'm confident about my position in the mountain pass, he now has to think about what's happening in the south and how he's going to respond. Sometimes creating pressure is just as important as winning battles, and right now, I'm trying to make him react to me instead of the other way around. We trade a few units here. My opponent loses a heavy unit, while I only lose a light unit, so I'd say that exchange works out better for me. More importantly, he's starting to push some of his units a little too far forward. Right now, they still have support, but if he keeps advancing like this, there might be an opportunity to cut them off. I'm watching those units closely because an encirclement here could completely change the battle. Sometimes all it takes is a few overextended units and suddenly an attack turns into a disaster. While I'm focused on the fighting in the south, I notice that I have lost a unit in the mountain pass. That's a small setback, but at the same time, my opponent is starting to overextend his forces there as well. The situation in the south is becoming interesting too. Some of his units have pushed too far forward and are now getting surrounded. If I manage to finish this encirclement, I can deal a huge amount of damage to his army. It looks like my opponent may have made the same mistake on both fronts, pushing too aggressively and giving me a chance to trap his units. Now I just need to make sure I don't rush and throw away this opportunity. I'm sending my tank toward the city because it's only defended by a low health unit. If I can capture it, a huge part of his army in that area could become completely surrounded, leaving him with very few options. The plan works perfectly. My tank takes the city, his forces get cut off, and the advantage quickly shifts in my favor. Realizing that the battle is no longer recoverable, my opponent decides to surrender, giving me the victory. And before we end, let's not forget the challenge from the start of the video. I challenged you to watch the entire battle and decide for yourself if the gameplay was worth supporting. If you enjoyed the strategy, the fights, and the comeback, then prove me wrong and hit that subscribe button.